Welcome to the Hippocratic Hustle, a podcast for women physicians to help you find freedom and independence in life, work, and finances. I'm Dr. Carrie Reynolds, and I interview independent MDs and DOs from all walks of medical life. In this podcast, we will learn the nuts and bolts of how our guests got started with their business or project and pass that knowledge on to you. Get ready to find power and inspiration in the stories of female physicians just like you. Learn how to plan for your future and spend money wisely. Discover new products and solutions to help you juggle all the different hats you wear. Join our community, find your hustle. And now a word from our sponsors. The Hippocratic Hustle has partnered with Common Bond, a leading student lender, to help physicians refinance their student loans and save big. Physicians who refinance their student loans with Common Bond save over $50,000 on average, and they receive a $200 cash bonus. And for every loan Common Bond funds, they also fund the education of a child in need. So your loan not only helps you save, it helps a child in need as well. For more information, please visit commonbond.co/HH. That's commonbond.co/HH. Loans are made by Common Bond Lending, LLC, and MLS number 1175900. Now, on with the show. Dr. Nilong V.S. is a board-certified pediatrician and mother of two beautiful boys. She was raised by educator parents in New Orleans and went on to earn a master's in public health from Tulane University, as well as a medical doctorate from LSU Medical School. After completing her pediatrics residency at LSU, she joined a private practice where, on a daily basis, she experienced her patients' desire for more sleep for themselves as well as sleep for their children. Dr. Vyas started her business, Sleepless in NOLA, in 2014. Welcome, Dr. Nilong Vyas, to the Hippocratic Hustle Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud and honored to be featured on the Hippocratic Hustle Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. That's so sweet of you to say. So today we're talking about your business, Sleepless in NOLA, which I presume stands for New Orleans.
Louisiana.
Yeah. So tell us.
It's become common to use NOLA since Katrina. It's become like the stamp of New Orleans.
Like the hip way to say it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like in Kansas City, we used to call it KC Mo because we lived on the Missouri side anyway. So anybody from KC, shout out. So anyway, KC Mo. So tell us all about your business and what services you provide and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So Sleepless in NOLA provides services for any family, nationally or internationally, whose children are having difficulties that surround sleeping, eating, and behavior, as well as those families that want a personalized approach that will honor their specific parenting style. So if a family chooses to do a consult with me, I meet with them for a consult, and it typically takes about 3 hours. And in that time, we talk about everything: eating, sleeping, behavior, discipline, diet, schedules, and how those schedules relate to not only the child that we're discussing, but also each family member. And we talk about what their schedule should be now, and as they get older, what it should be for their particular developmental stage and age. And typically, when parents are contacting me, they're pretty desperate. Like the problem's been going on for quite some time. So I tell them, the problem didn't happen overnight, so it can't be fixed overnight. So during the consult, we'll discuss, this is what I want you to start focusing on tonight. This is what I want you to do tomorrow. This is what I want you to do over the next couple of weeks to gradually work on eliminating these associations that kids tend to develop as it relates to eating and sleeping. And I kind of tell parents, imagine if you drink a Coke every single day and you're like, all right, this Coke's not good for me. I'm going to switch to Diet Coke. And if you just cut it out cold turkey, it would probably be really hard and you have a higher likelihood of relapse. But if you took a tablespoon of Diet Coke and put it into your Coke every single day, it may take a month, it may take a couple of weeks, but gradually you'll get used to just having the Diet Coke and you won't notice that there was a change. And so that's sort of my approach. It's a very gradual sort of approach to minimize the amount of stress and anxiety, not only for the child, but the parents as well. So the changes occur gradually without a whole lot of stress or anxiety for the families.
So it sounds like you're a coach essentially for the parents.
I am. Yeah, exactly. And so after the consult in a couple of weeks, they get a written sleep plan that is specific to their situation and their family. And in the meantime, they have access to me via text and email. And like I said, we're kind of gradually working on eliminating those associations that have built up that are causing the child not to sleep well. And then we set an implementation weekend, whether it's a month down the road or 2 months down the road, where we say, okay, we're going to work on all this stuff gradually and then sort of pull off the Band-Aid. And during that weekend, I'm on call for them to answer any questions and walk them through the process. But most of my clients end up calling me the weekend before that implementation weekend is set and say, we no longer need you. Our kid's already sleeping through the night. And that's the ultimate goal, is to do it so gradually that there doesn't need to be a full-on implementation or pulling off the Band-Aid sleep training process,
So like cry it out or whatever.
Exactly. It's ideally so gradual that no one really knows, especially the child doesn't know that things are changing.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm sure the parents really need some assistance with that, to take it slow and to, I guess, keep their spirits up through the whole thing.
Yeah, they need a lot of support because all the books out there are so contradictory that they don't know where to go and how to do it. And they've heard from this family or that parent or this, person that this is what they did and this is what worked for them. But the reason I think this business works so well is because it's targeted for that particular family and their particular lifestyle and needs. Because the books out there aren't going to tell you if you have 3 kids, then you should do this way, do it this way. Or if you have a toddler and a baby, you should do it this way. It's all just sort of generic. And that's what makes it hard for parents to just buy a book and follow it, because it's not specific to their situation and it's not a one size fits all kind of approach.
Yeah, this sounds super unique. How did you get the idea for this business?
So I got the idea to start the business when I finally had a kid of my own. So I thought I'd be, this awesome parent because I was a woman and I babysat all through high school and I loved kids and I was a doctor and a pediatrician on top of that. And then I actually had a baby and realized that,
right.
this whole parenting thing is pretty difficult and I have no idea what I was doing. So, I approached it just in my medical way and started reading every sleep book out there and medical journals and talking to friends and fellow pediatricians, and realized quickly for myself that all of this information is so contradictory. And, like one book would say you have to breastfeed on demand, and the other one would say you have to breastfeed on a schedule. And one book would say you should co-sleep with your baby so that you can have an attachment and bond to your child and they'll sleep better and sleep soundly through the night if they're sleeping with you. And another journal or article would say if you co-sleep, your baby will die,
Right.
And so to deal with all of this as a sleep deprived, exhausted, first time parent was just so overwhelming that I decided, I need to approach this in a very scientific and medical process and kind of, just look at it systematically. And so that's what I did. I went through all of the information in a systematic process, and it took me about 4 months to kind of go through the information and come up with a plan that seemed to work for me and my family. And I put it into practice with my son. He was about 4 months when I finally figured it all out. And he started sleeping through the night and eating better and was just generally a happier baby, which made me happier. And then, 2 years later, I had my second son, and he was just a generally more difficult child and was reflexy and just, had a hard time eating, had a hard time sleeping. And I put the same sort of practices into place with him. And when things started working for him as well, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't just a fluke, that there's something to this, this method. And so I got the confidence and I started teaching friends and family the method. And when they started having success with their kids and getting them sleeping through the night, I started doing, teaching it to my patients in my private practice. And then I started doing sleep consults during my lunch break. And when all of those families were successful, I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. And I left private practice 3 years ago to start the business full time.
Oh, wow. So you actually left private practice. That's amazing. How did you make that decision?
So I did quit, full on quit my day job to focus on the business full time. I kind of bounced the idea around of cutting back or quitting completely. And then when my father became really ill with cancer, and caring for him and taking time off of a 4-day-a-week private practice and being on call every third weekend and having 2 kids of my own was proving to be difficult, I decided to quit private practice and kind of focus on him and gradually start developing the business over time.
Wow, that's really great. So do you have any business background, or how did you kind of do all this business planning?
I don't have any business background. So it's been quite a learning process since the first day. I've been pretty business minded. I come from a lineage of businessmen. So It's partly genetics and a lot of hard work and research. And being a physician, they don't teach you anything about business in med school.
No.
So it was a lot of self-education, and I'm still self-educating. It's just a learning process every day as I go forward.
So how did you know that you'd have a strong market for this business? Was it just the patients that you're coming across in clinic?
Yeah, absolutely. In private practice, on a daily basis, there were parents coming in to see me, not only expressing that they were having difficulties with their children and their sleeping, but also eating and discipline, and how all of that was all interconnected. Like if they weren't sleeping well, they weren't eating well. If they weren't eating well, they weren't sleeping well. And then they weren't behaving well. And, it was just creating a lot of
drama.
That's the perfect word. Yes, drama. And so it was just creating difficulties for them and their families. And I knew if they just knew what to do, if they knew what to look for, that at least that aspect of parenting would be less difficult. I think parenting to me was harder than anything that I experienced in med school. And med school was hard, anatomy and physiology and, the being on call and being an intern and staying up all night, not even having time to eat or pee. Like that's a piece of cake, compared to parenting. And so I felt like if I could give these parents just some advice to kind of take the guesswork out of the basic eating and sleeping kind of day-to-day things, then at least then they can focus on all the other hard aspects of parenting. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm thinking of my maternity leave. And I always tell people this about maternity leave is I spent my entire maternity leave trying to get my daughter to go to sleep. That was maternity leave. Each day, that was my focus, was trying to help her take a nap.
Absolutely. And, when people talk to me about this business, and they always say, I wish I had you, when I was going through this with my kids, or I wish I need you now for my kids, or I wish you deal with adults, because I'm having difficulty
right.
sleeping. And in our society, sleep is seen as a sign of weakness. Like you hear people saying all the time, your kid needs 12 hours of sleep. I mean, what's wrong with them? Or what do you mean you have to leave this party to go put your kid down? Or, you have to miss swim class or music class because your kid needs a nap, And it's almost a badge of honor these days to say, oh yeah, I can get by with only 4 hours of sleep, And now that people are getting less sleep, it's starting to affect their overall health and well-being. And I want to change that change that and impact people in a positive way and change their perception about sleep and healthy sleep.
And definitely, obviously, kids' sleep patterns and how they disrupt the parents' sleep patterns is so important, and just such an emotional toll on parents, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. They use sleep deprivation, or used to, as torture,
right.
back in the day, in concentration camps and stuff, because when you're not sleeping well, you can barely remember your name the next day. You probably remember from, residency is how tired you are. You can barely do basic functions. And these parents not only have to care for these kids when they're not sleeping all night, but then they have to get up and go to work the next day. And it's difficult,
Yeah, you have a lot of physician clients. What tips do you have for physician moms and dads as far as all this sleep stuff for the kids?
I would say, I think women, especially women physicians, they're trying to do it all. We're sort of in the society that women should be doing it all. And physicians, especially, they're going to work all day and then coming home, and there's a ton of guilt associated with that, I'm out taking care of other people's kids, other people, and then I come home and, it's time for my kid to go to bed. So I barely have any time to spend with my kids. So they end up sleeping with them overnight or nursing them all night long, or, getting up with them multiple times, and they feel like that's justifiable because they weren't home with them all day long. So I would say, get your child on a good sleeping routine and habit from the get-go. And that way, not only do you get sleep and you'll be a better physician and a better mother and a better person in general because you're sleeping well, but the time that you do have with your child is going to be a lot more
quality.
Yes. It's going to be a lot more quality time, because if you're not sleeping well all day long and the child's up all night, nursing, I've had a lot of physician moms say, well, it's okay. The baby just wakes up 6 times a night, nurses, and then goes right back to sleep. But during that time, even though they're feeding and just going right back to sleep, all of their organs are working to process that meal. There's, stomach, kidneys, liver, or all of their organs are processing that meal, and they're not resting and regenerating for daytime activities. And the mother is getting up multiple times and not regenerating for her daytime activities. And so it's better for everyone to get quality sleep. And then the time that they do have with each other will be quality, and the child won't be so irritable and the mom won't be so irritable. So get rid of the guilt and establish good sleeping habits for yourself.
That's right. Shed the mommy guilt.
Yes.
Just shed it. Just let it go. Definitely. That's for sure. What I found interesting looking at your website is that it looks like you have a lot of clients with a lot of different ages. I guess my brain is thinking about my daughter when she was a newborn, because that was where I had the most trouble. But many of your clients are older, toddlers, or even, I don't know, how old have you?
Yeah, my oldest was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
I think the parents were like, well, she's a baby right now, so we're just going to let this go, and she'll figure it out when she's a year. Well, she'll figure it out when she's 2, and then she'll figure it out once she starts school, and kindergarten, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. And they were finally at a point, they're like, she's 10 and she's still sleeping in our room, and it's affecting her to be able to go to sleepovers, and it's affecting her relationships with friends. And so we're ready. We need help. And for them, it was, a super gradual process, because it's not something, the process that I use for her wouldn't be the same that you could use for a 4-month-old, So she's walking, talking person, and so I did part of the consult with the parents and then part of the consult with the child, and discussed what her goals were and discussed how she could help participate in changing her sleep habits.
Wow. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then a lot of toddlers.
Toddlers
never stay in bed.
No. The reason the parents of the toddlers finally reach out is because the mom is pregnant. And she's like realizing that, okay, I know the newborn's not going to be sleeping through the night, and now I have a toddler that doesn't sleep through the night. So I've got to get the toddler sorted out before this baby comes. When it's just one child, you can manage it and get by. But when there's 2 that aren't sleeping, that's when,
yeah,
the need for help comes.
The time was ticking for them. Yeah. It's like a time bomb. It's like, got to get this kid. It's like potty training or getting him out of diapers before the next one comes.
Or they realize, like, okay, it's easy enough to rock a 4-month-old or a 6-month-old or even a 12-month-old. But once they get to be 15 or 18 months and they're, 25 pounds, it gets a little harder to put them to sleep and have them fall asleep in your arms, and then kind of gently and gingerly put them into the crib without them waking up. And when all that stuff starts failing is when I get those calls. And a lot of my consult requests happen like at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. when I look at the timestamp.
Oh, of course.
They usually come really early in the morning.
Oh my gosh, that is funny. Yeah, that's when people are desperate.
Yeah.
You could do like a late night infomercial or something. You'd probably get a lot of business from that.
That would be good marketing.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to when my daughter was about 4 months old. And I remember I can't remember exactly what she was doing, but I remember looking at her and thinking, wow, she's manipulating me. She is manipulating the situation. And I just found that so remarkable that such a little baby could control her environment in such a way. And so I imagine that babies often use sleep as a means of controlling their family and controlling their environment and their parents and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's their only job in life, right? Is to figure out cause and effect. When I cry, they come, or when I laugh, they laugh, and that starts developing so early on. And so, I tell parents all the time, like, imagine, when you're pregnant, you're walking around all day long and you're basically rocking and lulling the baby to sleep. And then when you lay down at night, that's when you usually notice the baby being super active, is because it's finally calm and quiet. And they're like, oh, it's nighttime. It's time to be awake. And then they come out and their days and nights are mixed up, predominantly because of that reason. And then parents are like, okay, let me try rocking them to sleep, and it works. And so then it just becomes a kind of habit, and babies are blank slates. So if that's what you're doing to get them to sleep, that's what they're going to think is normal to get them to sleep. And so parents kind of get into this dance, this cause and effect dance, and it's not anybody's fault, but it just kind of naturally happens. And changing that and changing the parent's mindset is the key. And it's not that the child is necessarily being manipulative to be manipulative, but that's just what they know.
Right, exactly.
So if you change how you react, the child will automatically change how they react.
Right. And adapt to that new
Exactly.
rule, essentially. That's what I
Exactly.
feel like. Kids need guidance and rules. And even as early as infancy, they need
Absolutely.
that kind of guidance.
Yeah. And we're sort of taught like, well, they're just babies. They'll figure, like every baby knows how to sleep and every baby knows how to eat, but they kind of have to be guided, like, yes, they have a strong sense of smell. So even if you put them at your feet, yes, they will kind of wiggle up to the breast and find the breast and nurse and suckle, but they still need help.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. So getting back to the business side of this, I had some questions, just kind of wondering how you came up with all this and how the whole thing runs. So I was curious, you're a pediatrician. Do you run this as a consultation type of practice or as a pediatric practice?
I run it as a consultation practice, but I will gently guide patients medically and urge them to discuss medical issues with their pediatricians if and when they come up. But I want pediatricians to see me as an asset to them. And because I know from when I was in private practice, we're given, 15, maybe 20 minutes max for a well visit. And that's barely enough time to examine the patient, do all the anticipatory guidance, and discuss any concerns that the family has. And most of the time, there isn't time to discuss sleeping difficulties, which tend to take a lot of time. And, that's a lot of times the primary thing the parents want to talk about. And so I want pediatricians to know that they have a tool in their toolbox with me as, to use me as needed if a sleep issue crops up for them and their families. And because, they don't always have the time or the resources to discuss these issues fully with a family. A lot of parents come to me and say, well, I talked to my pediatrician about it, because that's their first line of defense. Pediatricians like, just do cry it out or just do this, the kid should be sleeping through the night, shouldn't need feeds anymore, and that's what I did when I was a pediatrician, because that's what you're taught to do and say. But the parents then will go out to books or, other resources or friends, and then they get all this contradictory information. And then they're like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, okay, well, maybe it'll just ride out on its own. And then it doesn't. And it's months and months or years of not sleeping well. And then it just catches up to everybody.
So for sure.
It is more of a consultancy, but I do want, pediatricians to know that they can use that.
Yeah. Awesome. So you get referrals from pediatricians from time to time?
I do. A lot of times it's from general pediatricians, because a lot of times the clients will go back and let their pediatricians know that they're no longer having sleep difficulties, or it'll come up as an anticipatory guidance topic. And they'll say, oh yeah, we're sleeping through the night. We use Sleepless and NOLA. And then, it kind of
goes from there.
The trajectory. Yeah. And so, I don't typically have to market myself because it has become a word of mouth business.
Did you start off with any marketing to kind of get things rolling?
I did. I was an affiliate with PMG, which is a physician moms group on Facebook for a year. And I've done some local talks with libraries or baby shops, and have marketed with like a local mom's blog, but predominantly it's been a word of mouth business. Like when I first started the business 3 years ago, I was seeing about a client a month, and now I'm seeing anywhere from 3 to 7 a week.
Oh, wow.
So it's grown considerably just with word of mouth advertising, because it kind of speaks for itself. Like everybody's constantly talking about sleep in social circles. You go to the park, you go to the doctor, you go to the music class, and parents are talking about sleep, and it's like, oh, well, I have someone, to recommend to you if you're having difficulties. And so it just kind of
snowballed.
It kind of,
it sounds like
it snowballs from there. Yeah. Because when I considered advertising, it was like, would I go to a physician or a doctor if I saw a billboard of them up?
Right.
Not likely. But if a friend of yours said, well, I use this doctor, even if it's just an OB or an internist, you'll go if your friend went and had a good experience. So.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I was curious, with it being a consultation type of practice, are there any legal or malpractice issues when you are a physician doing a consult type of practice?
Not so far, luckily. It is a concern, though, because of how litigious our society is. And since the rules as far as pediatrics and sleep are constantly changing, and new research is emerging and creating new regulations. So it's always in the back of my head. And so that's why, for me, safety is like my primary goal, at all costs, just because it's a risky, parents are sleep deprived. And so they're doing whatever they can to get their child to sleep. And sometimes that involves not so safe sleep situations. So that's usually my primary focus, is to make sure that that's covered. And so so far haven't had any issues.
Yeah, I definitely saw on your website that you emphasize that if you want to co-sleep, I think, how did you word it on your website? If you wanted to co-sleep or do some other type of unsafe practices,
right.
Your practice isn't a good place for those families.
Right. And if that's what's working for you, then you don't need my services. But if you're ready to sort of do safe sleep practices as well as, also have the benefit of your child sleeping through the night and do it in a gradual, nurturing sort of way, then I'm your person.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And what percentage of your clients are local in New Orleans versus outside of the area?
I would say 50-50. I see clients nationally, internationally. I've had several clients from Canada and then all over the US. So I would say it's a partial telemedicine practice since I see clients remotely via Skype and FaceTime. And then the local clients, like I see clients not only in New Orleans, but the surrounding metro area as well.
And you do in-house evaluations too, so.
I do. And I enjoy doing that because I get to see firsthand, the difficulties that they're dealing with. And because I'm there, I can quickly ascertain what changes need to be made, not only with the sleeping environment, but like the setup of the room, their eating space, playroom. And I can offer immediate advice on that, on the things that need to be addressed and changed. I can even, watch mom feed the baby, discuss latch, and watch them put the child to sleep and offer advice, So, medicine has changed so dramatically since the invention of the internet and Skype and FaceTime.
Yeah.
And so even if they're not local, I can still offer that service and have them walk me around to the child's room.
Yeah, for sure. You can still do a little tour.
Yeah. So it's pretty nifty.
So I also saw that you will travel to do in-home consultations.
I will, yes. I haven't had to, travel.
Someone in Paris, for example, could call you up and invite you over.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be right.
But I think because of, Skype and FaceTime, it's probably never going to happen where that's necessary. Unless the family's like, I just want you to do it for me, then.
Right. And you're not their night nanny, so, right.
No, but I do offer that option.
Oh,
if the
okay.
parents we have the consult and they're like, I just would rather you come in and take care of it. I do offer that service.
Oh, wow. That's pretty hands-on. That's awesome. So what challenges have you encountered with a business like this?
The primary challenges are how time-consuming it is. Because I spend so much time on each client from start to finish, and I'm so vested in their success. And I'm the face of the business. Like, I'm everything. I'm the accountant and the social media marketer and the secretary and the scheduler. And, I do all of it. So that in itself is challenging. And so there isn't really anybody that can cover for me or take over if I have a family emergency or an obligation. So I'm almost working more than when I was working in private practice, but because it's so rewarding and fulfilling, and since I can, make my own schedule and be my own boss, the challenges are minor in comparison to those benefits.
I could see that. And having the independence and control, that's really cool.
Yeah. And so, and I have just the freedom and flexibility. So if my kids have a field trip, I can be there without having to ask a colleague to switch days with me or feeling guilty that I won't be able to be at their field trip or, it's kind of like having the best of both worlds. I get to be a physician and have my own business and be my own boss, yet still be a mom and a wife and a friend, and I can take care of myself and my family in a way that I couldn't when I was working in private practice.
So it sounds like this has been pretty rewarding for you. Any other benefits to practicing medicine in this unique way?
I think I covered most of them. Being the flexibility, the ease, at which I can make my own schedule. A lot of times people are like, well, do you feel like you're not a doctor anymore? Do you ever want to be a doctor again or go back to medicine and practicing medicine? And I'm like, I kind of feel like I am practicing medicine. I am still taking the holistic patient under consideration when I make my recommendations, and I'm looking at them on a developmental level as well as a social level and, medical aspect as well, and considering all of those things when I think about their sleep needs and developmental needs. So I feel like I am practicing medicine, not in the traditional sense, but I still feel like I'm a doctor. I don't I don't feel like I let that go.
Yeah.
I mean, just today somebody asked, do you think you'll ever go back to being a doctor? And I was like, I'm still a doctor.
Right. Well, I think, gosh, people think that, if they go and do any other sort of non-clinical, even if it's related to medicine, it's just like that's still a need that we have in society to have this type of position. So you're still fulfilling that need and you're still helping people regardless of how you go about doing it.
And it's a need that isn't being met in the traditional sense because, of insurance companies and the limits they're putting on how long the patients can spend with their physicians. It's a lot of these consulting companies are popping up all over because patients just need more than what the insurance companies are allowing.
Mm-hmm. And the value to the patient is so great that they don't mind paying out of pocket. Sometimes paying a lot of money out of pocket, depending on what the services are, because the value is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the other thing is that, I think sometimes, with copays and things like that, people undervalue what services they're getting. Yeah. So, if it's not totally free, they get frustrated. So like a $10 copay, if they felt like I didn't spend enough time with them, they're really angry that they spent $10. And it's just like, we just spent half an hour talking about your kid's constipation. It's like, that's $10. Like, what? You can't even go to a movie for $10. Come on.
I know.
It's like, don't get mad. Anyway, so it can be so frustrating because the value that we provide sometimes isn't seen, I guess, by the patients. So
and now that there's so much information available online, people feel like, well, I can get that information for free. So why do I have to pay you a $10 copay to get that information?
Right, because everybody's situation is specific and we need to make sure we look at everything. And especially in your situation with your clients, that's super specific as far as exactly how the parents are interacting with the kid and their sleep space.
How many children they have.
Yeah.
Their sleep space, if they're breastfeeding or not breastfeeding, if they're eating solids or not, how many naps, if they're in daycare. I mean, there's so
and the
many
personality
variables.
Of the parents. Yeah, exactly. Like, gosh, I see so many, I'm a pediatric gastroenterologist, so I see a lot of parents who are blaming what I think sounds like normal sleep patterns or the crying patterns of like reflux. 2-month-olds, for example, as reflux. And it's so hard, especially in my office, to talk them down from that because obviously they got referred for reflux from the pediatrician and all this, but and their mind is set that this is reflux and there's not a good way for me to prove that it isn't in my, 15 minutes that I have with them. So that's can be stressful.
Right. And that's why I feel like it's beneficial for me to have this medical pediatric background because I can talk to them about these things, and so I've talked about, reflux or restless leg or, how to medicate and not to medicate, and I always defer back to the pediatrician. I never want to step on anybody's toes, but I think it helps them because I can validate what their pediatrician is also saying. And then I've spoken with pediatricians about the patients as well to say, hey, I think this child may have reflux. Have you considered it? Or I really don't think they have reflux, or maybe there is a protein allergy because I get so much more detail and information in a 3-hour consult than they get in a 15-minute visit, even if they've been a patient for their, with that pediatrician for the last year. I get to look at it from such a holistic perspective that sometimes there's things that I can collaborate with the pediatrician to provide even better care for that patient.
Yeah, definitely. That provides a lot of value for the patient. Lots and lots of value.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So I see that you are also openly endorsed by Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. That's congratulations. That's really great that they were able to give a rave review of you guys on your website. So I won't ask you any questions about that to protect privacy, but it is so cool to get their endorsement. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, they were a great family to work with. And the thing that I came away with after working with them is that no matter who you are and how famous you are and how much money you have, you want nothing more than to see your kids be happy and healthy, and that parents will go to great lengths to achieve that for their children. And that is priceless. It was really, really refreshing to work with them.
That's so nice. That's so great. And plus, not only that, but you have pages and pages and pages of endorsements from other physician moms and other people from around the country. So congratulations on being so successful with your business. It sounds like you're providing an awesome service and people are really enjoying the care that you're providing and tips and tricks and getting their kids to sleep. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think, somebody told me a long time ago that your job should be what you're passionate about. And if you're passionate about it, you will be successful no matter what it is that you do. And that's definitely something I am, is passionate about sleep. It's just so crucial to the development of children, and it develops them into happier, healthier, just well-rounded people. And if they sleep well as children, they'll sleep well as adults. And, it's priceless. It's just something that,
Definitely can't put a price tag on a good night's sleep.
Yes.
For sure.
And, it's not that they'll never learn to read or write or walk or talk. That'll always happen, but they may not be doing it to their full potential if they're not sleeping well.
And same for mom and dad. So anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was so interesting, both from a sleep perspective and also from a business perspective. So thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for listening to the Hippocratic Hustle. Be sure to visit www.hippocratichustle.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and connect with our fantastic community of women physicians just like you. Please send feedback to hippocratichustle@gmail.com and tell your friends about the show. See you next time.